Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And I wonder how many times I've said to you words that have become something of a catchphrase on this programme. There's no point having a mind if you never change it. Profoundly unfashionable view, but I think still rather an important one. And the two gentlemen with me in the studio at the moment, Callum and Scott, who have covered their faces for reasons that will, if you're watching on a live... Have we got the cameras on at the moment? I'll find out for you, but if you're watching it later on a clip, the reason why their faces are covered is because they fear revenge attacks from some of the people that they have helped to jail. And the people that they have helped to jail are grown men who have contacted what they believe to be a profoundly underage 12, 13, 14-year-old girl online. And they've arranged to meet them in the hope of sexual activity, which would, of course, be under British law, and as of yesterday, under French law, that would, of course, constitute rape, because an underage person cannot give consent. But when I first started discussing these issues, I felt, and we always have those stories in the back of our minds, don't we, during the News of the World's anti-paedophile campaign, the story about paediatricians having bricks put through their windows. The very word vigilante is nuanced and difficult. But what Scott and Callum, I'm going to say, taught me was that there's no blanket response to this issue. There have been some big problems in Belfast recently with people who on the surface do what these chaps do, but do it in a much, much less responsible way. And police chiefs are profoundly unhappy with this. Some of these self-styled campaigners have ended up making already grisly situations worse. But under the terms of my own due diligence, dark justice does not deserve to be tarred with that brush, not only because... How many convictions is it now, Callum?
74, 73.
Over 70 people with criminal convictions for online grooming or similar as a direct result of your work. Well, there you go. Just do the counting, as I said earlier. Counting is the only thing that you can cite as certainty. So we'll talk to them imminently. The last time they were here, we sort of came up with a wizard wheeze to follow an investigation, to follow one of their campaigns from beginning to end. My colleague Martin Lindsay is an LBC, or the LBC reporter up in Newcastle. Martin, I want you to answer this question honestly. When you first got this mission explained to you, what did you think?
Well, to be honest, when we first got the access from Dark Justice, there were kind of two angles that I really wanted to investigate here, because this sort of vigilante group does pose a lot of questions. I want to know kind of what is the life of a so-called paedophile hunter. So why do they do it? How many hours a day? How does it work? How does it affect them, really? But two, to shine a light on, I suppose, the darkest corner of the internet, to reveal the true extent of child sexual grooming in this country. And to do this, as we've heard earlier on this show on LBC today, we had to follow a case from the very start to finish. You'll know, James, doing this job, you do get thrown into unusual situations and we're often become desensitised to what we see, but nothing could really prepare me for what I saw in that hour in Dark Justice's office back in May, when they were showing me how that operation worked. It was truly unbelievable, and the most shocking thing of the whole process for me was just the sheer volume of the messages that were coming through, as you heard on the package one that we played out earlier, all those pings coming through. Every one of those was a message from a potential paedophile, and these guys just don't have the time to follow up every single one.
And I know that weighs heavily on their mind. I'll talk to Scott and Callum about that. It's why they end up putting in the crazy hours that they put in. So there's a combination for you, Martin, of genuine surprise and a kind of appreciation of the sheer scale of this. I mean, that's what nobody really appreciates until they sit in the room, as you did, and see how quickly and how many of these predators are just circling the internet, hoping for somebody to put themselves in a vulnerable position. You then followed it all the way through to court last week. In package 2... Seeing as you've slipped into the industry lingo, I'll follow you. But in package 2, when this chap, Brian, was confronted by Scott and Callum, there was a vulnerability in his voice. There was a vulnerability in that recording, a humanity that obviously is utterly at odds with what we think about paedophiles. But it was odd, that. that sense that, crikey, he sounds like an ordinary bloke. He's not. He's disgusting, and the sooner he's banged up, the better. But do you see what I mean? That must have been another sort of surprising moment for you.
Yeah, when we met him, I suppose when you go into something like this, as I said, we do get thrown into unusual situations, but I've never been in a situation like this as a reporter, going so much into the unknown. You know, these guys, Dark Justice, Scott and Callum, wear stab vests to go on their meetings. You know, you don't quite know what you're going to get. But as I say before, that vulnerability in his voice, to me, a lot of people criticise these groups because they say they're guilty of entrapment. But the main surprise to me when I spent that hour with these guys is actually, I found it really interesting, they never send the first message. So they aren't actually coercing anyone into committing a crime that they wouldn't already be committing.
And, of course, the word entrapment is often misused, because if you offer to sell 5 kilos of cocaine to an undercover police officer, the fact that he is not actually a drugs kingpin and the cocaine doesn't actually exist, or you offer to buy it off him, then you're still going to be convicted. A crime has still been convicted. But you're right to highlight the confusion. And then finally, Martin Lindsay, of all the stories you've covered over the years, I suspect that this one is going to stay with you for a little longer than most.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the whole process. It was May last year that we first teamed up with Dark Justice to be given that hour of exclusive access into their office, and really, you don't quite know what you're going to find after that. And luckily for us, I suppose, as a reporter's perspective, we got the story of a man who was willing to drive 60 miles from his home in Carlisle over to here in Newcastle with his wife and daughter, and then while they were seeing doctors in the RVI hospital, slipped out to go and meet what he thought was a 13 or 14-year-old girl.
Did the wife turn up in court?
No, she didn't. He attended court on his own. He attended his first hearing on his own, where he said he would intend to plead not guilty. He then changed it last minute to guilty, and here we are now, the 74th conviction through the work of Dark Justice.
Martin Lindsay, you also did an astonishing job on this, and I thank you for it. It's a very odd assignment to have landing in your in-tray, and you dealt with it with serious aplomb and professionalism, so thank you for that. It's 11 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Scott and Callum from the organisation Dark Justice have agreed to take your calls. I never know on days like this. I've got the busiest switchboard in the business ordinarily, but on a day like this, I never know whether you want to ring in or whether you just want to listen to me talk to them. So it's entirely up to you. If you want to, I mean, be polite, but you can challenge them about the work that they do if you wish. They're both grown-ups. They're perfectly capable of looking after themselves, and they see the importance as well of defending the work that they do against some of the misconceptions that Martin and I alluded to a moment ago. The number you need to do that is 0345 6060 973. I'll repeat that, but they're here for another half an hour, so you have got an opportunity to get through. Scott, can I start by asking you to address that entrapment issue? I beg your pardon. Scott, can I start by asking you to address that entrapment issue? The simple suggestion that there's no victim here, so how can there be a criminal?
Well, I mean, the entrapment side of things, it's impossible to entrap these people because it's them making all the first moves. You know, like they're for example, all them bleeps, that was a kids' chat room. You know, they're already in them chat rooms, so... Tell
me about that. So a children's chat room is somewhere where children think they're communicating exclusively with other children?
Yeah, I mean, the name of the room's Teen Chat, and on the bottom of it says clearly for children aged 13 to 19. So, you know,
and yet, it's a cesspit.
Yeah, definitely. It's an absolute breeding ground.
Do we know about the people that run these sites? Could they be doing more?
We reached out to them the other day, and they emailed back, basically come back as like being sarcastic about it, saying we've worked with the FBI, the National Crime Agency, and the police, and we've got 200 times more convictions than what you have and whatnot, and we've helped the police do this, but people are distributing indecent images on there of children and whatnot.
Well, we'll look into that at a later date. We'll focus on this story. Yeah. Of those 74 convictions that you have now helped to secure, Callum, did they all unfold more or less like this one?
Something take a little bit more, something take a little bit less, depending on how, like, which police force is dealing with it and so on, because some police forces are more reluctant to take on a case like this because they think it's not going to stand up in court. But once they get that advice, then they go ahead and charge the person. And when you've got a 74 name-long list, it's fairly... So how would you describe your relationship with the police today? Northumbria Police is the primarily police force we work with, handing evidence in and so on, and they okay with it. they were a little bit reluctant at first, like any other police force who we give evidence to. They didn't want to take it. They told us to stop and so on. But as we got on, you can't tell grown men what to do, you know what I mean? So they don't bother us
So
anymore.
when you ring up to report that you've got one, as we heard in that report, are you ringing a number that we all use, or do you have a specific
999.
Really, you don't have a
But
specific
we
point
do
of
have
contact?
points of contact, like first point of contact for officers and stuff like that.
Right. Scott, remind us why you started doing this.
Just wasn't happy with the amount of abuse that was going on in our area and the amount of money that the government have taken away from the police, and sadly they're taking more away again. So, you know, the problem's not going anywhere, it's not becoming any less, and now groups like ourselves are responsible for almost half of all cases in court.
It's 12:15. I'll get to the break very, very shortly. But actually, no, I'll go to the break now, but I'll warn you that when we come back, I'm going to ask you a little bit about some of the organisations that are not behaving in as responsible and as reputable fashion as you are. If you would like to put anything to Scott and Callum from Dark Justice, 74 convictions. You know what I'm like when I talk about pendulums. When my mind changes, I'm always open to the possibility that it might change back. But if you disapprove of what these chaps do, that means that 74 people who now have criminal convictions for seeking sexual contact with children would not have criminal convictions. So, you know, take that to the bank and tell me it's not a good thing. I'm a bit of a departure from the usual diet on the programme. For the second time, I have the two men who run a organisation called Dark Justice in the studio with me. Scott and Callum pose online as underage children. Well, all children are underage humans, and wait to see whether or not men with hopes of sexual activity with children get in touch with them, and so far 74 have been convicted, 20 of whom, I should add, already had convictions. I'll just run through stuff, some of which I know the answer to, but we've got about 200,000 more listeners than we had last time you were here, so there'll be plenty of people listening who don't know this. Steve says, and if you take this one, Callum, I'm curious as to what images of children they use to lure these sick people. Do they use real pictures of underage girls?
So the process is basically we'll get volunteers who send pictures of themselves because they look younger than
Yes.
the age of consent, and they'll sign a release form and a proof
So
of
an adult
identity.
who looks 13 or 14, you with
And
their
we
permission.
double check the identity. They need photo ID, so they cannot just say, "Oh, this is me." We need to double check that.
That it is
and,
definitely them.
and their details are handed to the police to double check as well. So if it's taken to court, and if someone's barrister tries to argue, "Oh, that is a real child,"
Yes.
they can't argue that's a real child because it's been double checked by the police, and the police have got statements of them as well.
In a way, that answers the next question, Scott, but not completely. While I applaud the work that Dark Justice are doing, the only concern I have is who monitors their activity in between the evidence they submit to the police.
Well, I mean, we're the same as everybody else as a citizen. Like when we're reporting a crime, if we lie about something, you know, the police will find out about it and we will be punished for that. We're not like above the law, you know. We're just citizens who've taken this on.
And a few people, there's two sort of sides of the same coin, really. Why can't the police just hire these two guys so all the vigilante labelling can go away? And also, on a similar theme, but perhaps a slightly less generous one, this from Liz. How do they have all this time on their hands? Don't they work? If they are that concerned about crime, why don't they join the police service instead of taking the law into their own hands? I don't know which one of you wants to answer that.
I mean, when it comes to joining the police, she might want to read some headlines about the 200 million that they plan on taking, and the rest of it that they're cutting to them, you know.
They are still hiring, though. I appreciate there's a programme of cuts that obviously is limiting the amount of activity they can do in all fields, but her point would be that, there's not a moratorium on hiring police officers.
I mean, it would push us into just being frontline police, and, you know, like, you know, it's not needed or anything, but, you know...
This is a gap you want to fill, and you can fill it
like
better.
It used to be,
Yes.
back in the day, like Bobby on beat sort of thing, keeping everyone safe. It's reactive policing now,
And then
we're not proactive anymore.
we both used to run a media business before we started doing this, you know what I mean? We're hard-working people and stuff, and it's, you know, we're not sitting here saying, "Oh, well, You know, we do spend a lot of time doing what we do, and we understand that, but it needs a lot of time to tackle it.
And on a similar theme, a lot of people getting in touch, some because they're keen to help you, others because they're just curious. If you're putting in 17 hours on a regular basis, 17 hours a day, as we heard in the packages that Martin put together, how do you support yourselves?
We're fortunate enough to have people in our family who support what we do and believe in what we do and believe it's changing society, so they help us out.
So you live a kind of subsidised life because the people close to you care about the work that you're doing as much as you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way to push forward. I mean, just live very basically.
And members of the public can show their support for you through Find. I think we put the link up last time you were here, didn't we?
Yeah, we do have a donation page. We tend not to plug it because it's not something that we've ever...
But it's not why you're doing this.
No, it's not what we do it for, but I mean, in the past, people have helped us get new vests and stuff like that, which keeps us safe while we're out there, which, you know, we're grateful for, and our family are even more grateful for.
I'm sure. I think some listeners to this programme bought the latest lot.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
So we don't do nothing and never achieve anything. Should we take a call from Kingsley, who's in Cardiff? If you pop your headphones on, lads, and then we'll see what Kingsley wants to ask you, because I've interviewed them before, and so it may well be that there are questions I've missed. Kingsley, what would you like to say to Dark Justice?
I'm basically just wondering why you chose to go for this type of criminal. Like, why go for paedophiles when you could pick, like, drug dealers or any other sort of crime, really?
I think when it comes to, like, the war on drugs, a lot of money is already pushed towards that sort of tackling it. And, you know, for us to go out and start meeting drug dealers to buy drugs from them, you know, that's putting us in serious places. You know, like, it's not... I'm not saying it's not harder or it's not easier to do. It's just not something that we have the same passion about as we do for tackling child abuse. You know, like, we've grown up and we've got friends who've been abused. You know, we know people who've tried to take their lives because they've been abused and stuff, where when it comes to drugs, we haven't experienced the same type of life events which would have made us want to do that.
In short, I mean, the short answer is you care more about these kind of crimes than you do about other kind of crimes, as indeed do many members of the public. Is that? I mean, do you not, Kingsley? I'm not having a go at you, mate, but just to understand why you asked that question. Do you read stories about child abuse and not feel more disgust than you do when you read stories about drug dealing?
I don't know.
All right.
Yes, I guess so. But it's in the same way. I'm just kind of seeing it as like you.
Well, if I had a choice of taking a weed dealer off the streets or a paedophile, it wouldn't take me 30 seconds to decide which one was more important.
I understand that, but I think more with hard drugs, when you get one person who's responsible for cocking up multiple, like effectively hundreds of people's life.
And they will be at the top of the police's hit list, won't they? Already.
Yeah, I guess so.
But no, it's what, mate. That's why I said I wanted to make it absolutely clear I wasn't having a go at you, because this is the whole point of these sort of exchanges is to ask questions that have occurred to you and get answers that hopefully will be as complete as I think that one was. Let's go to Brian, who's in Boreham Wood. Brian, what would you like to say to Scott and Callum?
Hi. First of all, great work, guys. Absolutely fantastic work. I own a number of chat sites, online chat sites that operate in the UK and across Europe and America. And I'm absolutely happy and excited about what they're doing because it helps. There was a question earlier about what the guys do in between them reporting and everything else. Now, any online chat site worth their salt will be logging everything that happens online. So if the guys are doing something they shouldn't be doing, then the police will find out, because they'll be getting the log files so they can see the entire conversation that happened between them. And that also helps if anyone is concerned that they're going to be entrapping people, they're going to be putting words in their mouth, they're going to be a bit dodgy about how they're going about it, because everything goes back to the police, or at least that's how we do it on ours. And I would hope that any chat site, especially the ones that deal with children, they do just that.
Do yours? Do you have sites that are dedicated to children?
No, we used to allow children on, but we stopped that some years back, and we've said 16 and above, because there's just is asking for trouble.
Well, that's the point. And when you see the scale in that report, when you hear the pings, the sheer avalanche of individuals getting in touch with sick ambitions, you realise that it is all or nothing, really. You either don't run chat rooms for children, or you facilitate this sort of behaviour.
Exactly, and the thing is, when you have kids online, you have a duty to protect them, and it is, let's just call it, difficult to protect them, because there are sick bastards out there that try to get in touch with them. And even though we don't allow anyone under the age of 16, you will get the ones that will lie about their age and everything else. And you'd need an army of monitors in order to keep an eye on that. I know. I'm just going to apologise for one of the words that you used, Brian, in case people listening were offended by it. It was unnecessary, but given that this is already a very, very grown-up conversation, we'll let it pass. We're joined by Scott and Callum from Dark Justice, an organisation that catches paedophiles. I know it all sounds a bit the day-to-day, but that is exactly what they do. And if you've been following the investigation undertaken by my colleague in Newcastle, Martin Lindsay, you'll know that there are no better words to describe what they do. It is an interesting question that came in from Josh. I'll give you the PS first. He says, PS, keep up the good work. Question for them, is it always men?
No, we have actually getting a woman convicted. We don't just target men. If women
you don't target anyone, you wait to see who comes to you, don't you?
See who comes in. If women are going to interact with these profiles as well, then they are going to get caught as well. We don't favouritize anyone.
And you're not, as I stress again, you're not actually setting out to catch any type of individual, except an individual who has a sexual interest in children. The website is darkjustice.co.uk, and there is a lot of people who are asking me how they can help you, and there is a button there that allows you to donate, or you can go directly, darkjustice.co.uk/donate. I know a few people did last time. How many convictions were you on last time you were here? You can't remember, can you?
I think it was close to like 40, I think.
So it's nearly double now since the last time we saw you. Let's take another call. Peter is in Doncaster. Peter, what would you like to say?
Hi, it was just regarding the kind of the social media aspect. So I don't think Dark Justice do this, but I've seen several kind of paedophile hunter groups on Facebook that do the kind of Facebook Live. So when they kind of approach these people, and they kind of these are kind of stuns kind of things, and it's kind of the mob mentality that
they're chasing clicks and views.
It's like the name and shame that sometimes gets. So, we found the person. It just happens to be kind of someone the same name or a similar name, similar appearance, and kind of then how the mob will then jump on that person.
So there's two questions here. Number one, do you do this? And number two, if not, what do you think of the people who do?
We don't go live, and we've never named or would never name anyone until they've been in a court of law and a judge has handed
You'd
them.
reduce the chances of getting a conviction if you did, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it would
Fair
play
trial.
a lot of factors in contempt of court, breach of human rights and fair trials. We don't really have an opinion on the groups who do it, but
you do, but you don't want to say it because
we don't agree with what they do, and
right.
We've asked them not to do it because what they do and affects us as well.
It's like trial by social media, isn't it? It's not a justice system we want to be going down. People getting found people being found guilty by social media.
Well, I mean,
you make a good point.
For example, on lives and stuff where people have been named before they've been to court, like, we've never had anyone kill themselves, but people who've named people first and who've went live have had, because it pushes people too far. Everyone has a breaking limit. And
so you're conscious of that. There's a humanity to what you're doing. You must worry that one of these investigations could end up in somebody taking their own life.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we believe that if you put too much on them and don't give them that time, which we do, where they're getting to understand, like, yes, okay, I did do wrong, and I am going to go to court. If we just all in one day, I've just been discovered being a child, like a sex offender. This is all over Facebook. People are attacking me, left saying this and saying that. That could push a person to do something like that. And
it's interesting you say that, because this is the moment in the latest conviction that you've secured that really resonated with me. This man, Brian Turnbull, is 60 years old. His wife and daughter are attending a hospital appointment where he thought he'd used the time available to make contact with what he believed was a 14-year-old girl who he had told online that he wanted to do various things to, and had shared with her as well as a photograph of himself naked.
Yeah.
Let's just listen again to this.
Just on the way, yeah? Police are on the way.
Why?
For attempting to meet a child following sexual grooming, yes, Brian?
No.
Yes.
No.
From an organisation known as Dark Justice, yeah?
Right, yeah. Well, I've been having a laugh with you. I know what you're going to bring up. I've been having a laugh with you, but I've also...
Been having a laugh? Is this a laugh?
Callum then shows Brian the naked photograph he took of himself and then sent to the decoy profile.
My colleagues wouldn't believe that's a laugh, would they?
Oh, yeah, well...
Wouldn't he not?
That's true.
Would they believe that's a laugh?
That's true, no.
Would my colleagues in the police believe that's a laugh?
That's true. Well, I won't run away, pal. No, I couldn't run to save myself.
You're not going to get far anyway.
No, I couldn't run to save myself.
Brian is now apprehended while his family are in the hospital behind us. Now they call the police.
We've got him...
Just in case you do.
He's came to meet what he thinks is a 13 or 14-year-old girl following sexual grooming.
God, I feel sick now. I feel horrible. I don't know why it come because I knew in my mind.
Well, yeah, of course you did. Because right at the beginning, when you first wanted to meet, you talked about the police, didn't you?
Yeah, I knew.
20 minutes then pass and Brian gets an unexpected phone call.
Was that your wife ringing you there?
Yes.
Why didn't you answer?
Because he told us not to. She'll divorce us, enough, man. So what would she want to help? She wouldn't help me, you know.
Brian's life is falling apart minute by minute. He's physically shaking and has to sit down.
Martin Lindsay reporting there for LBC. Now, that's the bit I find hardest to process, because I can deal with paedophilia when I think of them as being like monsters living in sewers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that bloke is every man. He could be living next door to you. I've seen pictures of him with his stick. He looks like somebody's granddad. And he sounded so human when it came out. That's the bit that actually makes me sicker than anything else, because if you've got them in your mind as monsters who you could spot from a mile off because they've got a whopping great sign on their head saying Paedo or whatever it may be. But do you ever feel sorry for them when you catch them?
No, because you notice that he's only upset because he's been caught.
And it was so matter-of-fact, wasn't it, as well? It was like that, I couldn't run away. Didn't I mean, part of me would expect them to start howling and shrieking like a trapped animal, but there was a matter-of-factness to that.
Oh, believe me, you do get the people who are like that.
Yes.
But I think with him, he just knew there was too much evidence and he'd been caught.
He tried to talk his way out of it.
Yeah, tried to.
You produced a photograph that he'd sent to someone he believed to be a 13-year-old girl, and that was the moment where the phrase "bang to rights" pops into your head, doesn't it? Without any.
That's the thing that a lot of people think, like, these people are going to be like hiding in a dark room with big yellow stained fingers and stuff like that. But you know, there could be anyone, and that's what people need to always remember. You know, like, these people can be anyone, anywhere, any job, any race, any religion. Any walk of life will have these type of people in it who wish to cause children harm.
And your list of 74 people proves that point conclusively, doesn't it?
I think we need to drop, like, the stereotype, and you know what I mean, of that stereotype of them sitting in a dark room in the boxes on a computer, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, because they're out there living a normal life. The idea, I mean, this is where you struggle, isn't it? Where you think, oh, I've got an appointment that day. My wife's in the hospital that day. I'll see if I can...
meet up with a underage child for sex.
Because in his mind, this is normal.
I mean, he said some stuff on the video as well, you know, it's... To him, it seemed normal, and, like I say, these people only ever seem upset because they've been caught in the act.
I couldn't do what you do. I've said that to a few guests that I've met in the course of my career. The last one I said it to was Eric Cantona. So there's a lot of things that I couldn't do. But in your case, it's because of... I guess it's because I couldn't wash my mind afterwards. Whereas usually it's because you look... And I guess this is a talent that you have, or a mission at least, a duty. There must... I mean, are you ever going to stop?
I don't think so.
I think it would be too hard to stop because it's one of them emotive subjects we're just drawn to it.
And if you tried to, you'd be lying there at night thinking about them still being out there.
Well, it's always our thought. What about the next one? You know, 20 of these people who we've caught have had previous... Well, who've been convicted have had previous for doing this stuff, and you always think, like, if it wasn't us, was a real child, you know, and that would go through your head, and that would be more soul-destroying than actually doing this is.
Well, good luck. And as I say, every time I see you, I want to live in a world where people like you aren't needed.
So do we.
But that goes without saying, doesn't it? Actually, final question. When you make your confrontation or you track someone down, because I know you do detective work as well, finding people by clues that they sometimes unintentionally leave online. If there are family members with them, is there a pattern to how family members react, or is that as random as the actual culprits themselves?
If there's family members, we won't actually approach the property or anything like that. We just watch on by and wait for the police.
Yes.
Due to there could be...
But wives and parents and what have you, you often read about people standing by men.
In the very rare cases where it's happened, and it's happened out of 150 people who've been arrested so far, and obviously there's 74 who've been convicted so far. It's only ever happened a couple of times where, you know, like, we've been talking to a person and a family member has happened to have been there and stuff, and you can understand, like, because no one wants to ever believe that one of your own family member, your own blood, is this type of person. But, you know, it can happen to any family. No one's untouchable from... Because, like I say, these people come from all walks of life.
Indeed they do. Dark Justice, Scott Callum, it's always a pleasure to meet you. And I salute the work that you do. You know that I do, although you've given me moral flipping quandaries and to argue with myself in my own head, but I'm still where I was the first time I met you. The work that you do is essential and important, and as my children grow older, I feel even more indebted to you. If you want to find out more about what they do, darkjustice.co.uk not only allows you to do that, but also show your support. A lot of you have been in touch with me seeking to do that. Safe journey home. There was a horse on the line on your way down from Newcastle.
Yes.
I hope it's moved.
Could only happen up north.
It's 12:46. 10 minutes to 1 is the time. Oh, I like that. Should we do it again? Can we do it again? 10 minutes to 1 is the time. Oh, well. It is time for Theo Usherwood. Was that your... Have you been...
Oh, that was mine. Have
you got your own theme tune? Have we got a Theo theme tune? We've been trying to come up with one for ages.
It was brilliant.
The last one sounded a bit like Nelly the Elephant.
Warm the cockles, that did.
What's been going on at PMQs?
Jeremy Corbyn has enjoyed a good few weeks at PMQs in recent months, but of course it was always going to have to come to an end, and it did from his very first remarks.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister for the short statement she made concerning the incident in Salisbury, and I think we all thank the Emergency and Security Services for their response, and we await updates on the progress of investigations into the cause of that incident. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is International Women's Day, a chance to both celebrate how far we've come on equality for women, but also to reflect on how far we have to go, not just in this country, but around the world.
That was the trap, James.
Oh, it's so obvious what's going to happen next.
Winding it up. The Prime Minister didn't miss a beat.
Well, first of all, can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for telling me that it is International Women's Day tomorrow. I think that's what's called mansplaining. I look forward to welcoming Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia to this... Well, Labour backbenchers from sedentary positions are shouting shame. Can I just say to those backbenchers that the link that we have with Saudi Arabia is historic, it is an important one, and it has saved the lives of potentially hundreds of people in this country.
Theresa May referring to, of course, the cooperation when it comes to issues on security and terrorism. Jeremy Corbyn began PMQs by focusing on the decision, of course, to host Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for a 3-day visit, of course, which starts this afternoon. The nub of his argument: should Britain be helping Saudi Arabia wage a brutal war in Yemen, and should we be helping a country accused of supporting extremism?
Millions face starvation. 600,000 children have cholera because of the Saudi-led bombing campaign and the blockade. 600,000 children with cholera is something that I think everyone in this House should take seriously. Germany has suspended arms sales to Saudi Arabia, but British arms sales have sharply increased, and British military advisers are directing the war. It cannot be right that her government, Mr. Speaker, it cannot be right that her government is colluding in what the United Nations says is evidence of war crimes.
Jeremy Corbyn not holding back.
Just pause briefly, Theo, actually, if you don't mind. I two reasons. One is slightly less serious than the other. I just wanted to read you this. It's Theo time is about to kick off on LBC. Brilliant reporting by @Theo Usherwood, accompanied by @Mr. James OB, cracking dad jokes.
What's the dad joke?
It's a dad joke.
Dad?
You know, jokes that dads... you've got all this...
You've got all
this
as in
to
dad
look forward
dancing
to.
as in a dad joke.
Do you want to hear a dad joke?
Go on in.
What's this?
Go on.
Pair of pants. Anyway, carry on.
Quite good, actually. I think that's better than a dad joke. Jeremy Corbyn, he doesn't have the ability to ad-lib. He doesn't have the ability to think on his feet, to jostle, to hustle at the dispatch box. And so when he gets caught out like he did by Theresa May, he doesn't have that ability to come back. He can only go with the scripted questions. And that's the problem he faced today. When he's down, he's down. When Theresa May lands a punch, he can't get it back up. He doesn't have that ability.
So no one in the inner circle, speaking of which, would have said to him, are you sure that going in on International Women's Day is such a great idea with a woman?
Somebody needed to read that out loud.
Yeah.
You read it out loud. When you hear it out loud, it just doesn't work, does it? It just...
No.
Facepalm moment.
Yes, what happened next?
Theresa May, she remained composed. Best performance at the dispatch box so far.
I was pleased when I went to Saudi Arabia in December. I met with the Crown Prince. I raised with him then the need to open the port of Hodeida to humanitarian and commercial supplies. I'm pleased to say that Saudi Arabia then did just that. This vindicates the engagement that we have with Saudi Arabia, to be able to sit down with them. Their involvement in Yemen came at the request of the legitimate government of the Yemen. It is backed by the United Nations Security Council, and as such we support it. But on the humanitarian issue, I would say it is for all parties in the conflict to ensure that they allow humanitarian aid to get through to those who need it.
It happens, doesn't it, with politicians when they're facing a topic which is very difficult. They don't look good on it. They're weak on the subject, particularly around foreign affairs, in this case Saudi Arabia. Theresa May made an argument. Whether you agree with it or not is up to you, but she made the case that actually we need to be engaging with Saudi Arabia rather than simply withdrawing and allowing the country to carry out its policies as it sees fit. But it hasn't all been plain sailing for the Prime Minister this afternoon. On Friday, of course, she spelt out what she wanted from our...
She's a bit generous.
Well, there was more detail than we've had before, James.
Well, yes, but no.
Okay, not a huge amount. But it was an ambitious plan for our relationship with the EU. You give me that look.
Carry on.
The idea that we're going to have a Canada plus arrangement with the EU with special access for the city of London. Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, has been in Luxembourg this afternoon, basically saying that's not going to happen.
Now coming to the core of our future economic relationship. During my talks in London last Thursday and in her speech last Friday, Prime Minister Theresa May confirmed that the UK will leave the single market, leave the customs union and leave the jurisdiction of DCJ. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that the only remaining possible model is a free trade agreement. I hope that it will be ambitious and advanced, and we will do our best, as we did with other partners, such as Canada recently. But anyway, it will only be a trade agreement.
Sheila's talking about this after one, James, but what Donald Tusk is saying is that if you want to be outside the European Court of Justice jurisdiction, if you want to be outside the customs union, outside the single market, you're only going to get a free trade agreement. You're not going to be able to have that privileged access because it
You say privileged access. I prefer David Davis's phrase when he was campaigning to persuade people to vote to leave the European Union. He said we would have the exact same benefits.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Exact same benefits, though.
No, Donald Tusk...
No, but exact same benefits.
That's not going to happen.
Exact same benefits, though.
It's not going to happen.
David Davis, though, Exact same benefits, though.
Is this Vicky Pollard?
I think Vicky Pollard is cleverer than David.
Yeah, probably.
So what's happened now is we've spent 18 months being told by the European Union what we can't have. We've kept asking for it. Theresa May pretended on Friday she still thought we could have it. The European Union have turned around and reiterated the fact that we can't have it, and now the hard Brexiters will claim that the reason why we can't have the exact same benefits and have our cake and eat it and have the sunny uplands is all the European Union's fault for doing exactly what they said they'd always do ever since the result came in.
Yeah. But I just want to put that on the record.
Yeah.
I just what Donald Tusk said, because I think it's important.
Of course,
we've got
absolutely
the transition. We've got the transition talks in the European Summit in Brussels next week. That's when these details are going to be thrashed out. But from what Donald Tusk said today, if you want to have that special access to the single market, you have to remain part of it. You can't say
exact same benefit.
Benefits, sorry.
Exact same benefits. That's what I'm going to call him now, David. Exact same benefits. There is good news though on Brexit for people that feel their family spend too much time on their mobile phones when they're on holiday. British people are going to have to pay roaming charges again when we leave, unless you're with certain suppliers. We may see some movement on that. And those of us who think that flights are too cheap because we care about the environment, it's going to be much harder to fly to America.
But there is a silver lining to that. Just leave your phone at home.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I said it was good news. Did you not hear? This is good Brexit news. You won't be able to make phone calls on holiday, so you can spend more time talking to your family, and we're going to save the environment by making it harder to fly to America. What was the other one? The open sky. Oh, and steel. If we want to sell steel to America, they're going to stick a 15% tariff on it, which is great for... I've lost it.